Here's the book for teammates. Once upon a time in America, when automobiles were black and looked like tanks, and laundry was white and hung up to the clothesline to dry, there were two wonderful baseball leagues that no longer exist. They were called the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues had extraordinary players and adoring fans came to see them wherever they played. They were heroes, but players in the Negro Leagues didn't make much money, and their lives on the road were hard. Laws against segregation didn't exist in the 1940s. In many places in this country, black people were not allowed to go to the same schools and churches as white people. They couldn't sit on the front of the bus or the trolley car. They couldn't drink from the same drinking fountains that white people drank from. Back then, many hotels didn't rent rooms to black people, so the Negro League players slept in their cars, and many towns had no restaurants that would serve them, so they often had to eat meals that they could buy and carry with them. Life was different for the players in the major leagues. They were the leagues for the white players. Compared to the Negro League players, white players were very much well paid. They stayed in good hotels and ate in the fine restaurants. Their pictures were put on baseball cards, and the best players became famous all over the world. Many Americans knew that racial prejudice was wrong, but few dared to challenge openly the way things were, and many people were apathetic about racial problems. Some feared that it could be dangerous to object. Vigilant groups like the Ku Klux Klan reacted violently against those who tried to change the way blacks were treated. The general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team was a man by the name of Branch Rickey. He was not afraid of change. He wanted the Dodgers fans to have the best players he could find, regardless of the color of their skin. He thought segregation was unfair and wanted to give everyone, regardless of race or creed, an opportunity to compete equally on the ball fields across America. To do this, the Dodgers needed one special man. Branch Rickey launched a search for him. He was looking for a star player in the Negro Leagues who would be able to compete successfully despite threats on his life or attempt to injure him. He would have to possess the self-control not to fight back when opposing players tried to imitate or hurt him. If this man disgraced himself on the field, Rickey knew his opponents would use it as an excuse to keep black players out of the Major League Baseball for many more years. Rickey thought Jackie Robinson might be just the man. Jackie rode the train to Brooklyn to meet Mr. Rickey. When Mr. Rickey told him, "I want a man with the courage not to fight back," Jackie Robinson replied, "If you take this gamble, I will do my best to perform." They shook hands. Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson were starting on what would be known in history as the greatest experiment. At spring training with the Dodgers, Jackie was mobbed by blacks, young and old, as if he were a savior. He was the first black player to try out for a major league team. If he succeeded, they knew others would follow. Initially, life with the Dodgers was for Jackie a series of humiliations. The players on his team who came from the South, men who had been taught to avoid black people since childhood, moved to another table whenever he sat down next to them. Many opposing players were cruel to him, calling him nasty names in their dugouts. A few tried to hurt him with their spiked shoes. Pitchers aimed at his head, and he received threats on his life, both from individuals and from organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. Despite all the difficulties, Jackie Robinson didn't give up. He made the Brooklyn Dodgers team. But making history with the Dodgers was only the beginning. Jackie had to face abuse and hostility throughout the whole season, from April through September. His worst pain was inside. He often felt very alone. On the road, he had to live by himself because only the white players were allowed in the hotels and towns where the teams played. The whole time, Pee Wee Reese, the Dodgers shortstop, was growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. He had rarely even seen a black person, unless it was in the back of the bus. Most of his friends and relatives hated the idea of his playing on the same field as a black man. In addition, Pee Wee Reese had more to lose than any other players when Jackie joined the team. Jackie had been a shortstop, and everyone thought that Jackie would take Pee Wee's job. Lesser men might have felt angry toward Jackie, but Pee Wee was different. He told himself, if he's good enough to take my job, he deserves it. When his Southern teammates circulated a petition to throw Jackie off the team and he asked him to sign it, Pee Wee responded, I don't care if this man is black, blue, or striped, and he refused to sign. He can play and he can help us win. And he told the others, that's what counts. Very early in the season, the Dodgers traveled west to Ohio to play in the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati is near Pee Wee's hometown of Louisville. The Reds played in a smaller ballpark where the fans sat close to the field. The players could almost feel the breath of the fans on the backs of their neck. Many who came that day screamed terrible, hateful things at Jackie when the Dodgers were on the field. More than anything, Pee Wee believed in doing what was right. When he heard the fans yelling at Jackie, Pee Wee decided to take a stand. With his head high, Pee Wee walked directly from his shortstop position to where Jackie was playing first base. The taunts and the shouting of the fans were ringing in Pee Wee's ears. It saddened him because he knew it could have been his friends and neighbors. Pee Wee's legs felt heavy, but he knew what he had to do. As he walked toward Jackie wearing the gray Dodgers uniform, he looked into the teammates' bold, pained eyes. The first baseman had done nothing to provoke the hostility, except that he sought to be treated as an equal. Jackie was grim with anger. Pee Wee smiled broadly as he reached to Jackie, and Jackie smiled back. Stopping beside Jackie, Pee Wee put his arm around Jackie's shoulders. Soldiers. I can't say anything. An audible gasp rose up from the crowd when they saw what Pee Wee had done. Then there was silence. Outlined a sea of green grass stood these two great athletes, one black, one white, both wearing the same team uniform. I'm standing by him, Pee Wee Reese said to the world. This man is my teammate.